So this is very unusual, but this was probably one of the last times these people came out in the open. So up until the 1700s, these giants were still walking around in America. And if you do some digging, the New York Times has some articles that show us these giant skeletons. November 21st, 1856, from the New York Times, we see the description of a skeleton that was found 10 feet 9 inches in length. December 25th, 1868, there was an expedition found in Minnesota by the St. Ripids Water Power Company, and they were quarrying rock, and they found a 10-foot, 9.5-inch tall skeleton, and the bones alone weighed 364.25 pounds. And they say the body must have weighed at least 900 pounds, so this was a giant. New York Times, September 8th, 1871. Here it is right here. You can look this up. They're still available on the New York Times website. Said that they found giant skulls where the bone itself was nearly an inch thick. Pretty crazy. And the body was 8 or 9 feet tall. There's nobody like that here now, not even basketball players. New York Times, February 8th, 1876. As you can see right here. 3 skeletons were found nearly 9 feet in height in this one dig. Then we have August 10th, 1880. And in this one, we see that there were skeletons that were 11 feet 3 inches long when they were found. May 25th, 1882. This was a mound that was 60 feet in diameter and 12 feet high, in which they found giant skeletons inside. November 20th, and you're going to see this mound thing over and over again. There's lots of mounds that have been built in America. They've all been suppressed. We can hear a little bit about it, but the whole science has been erased by the descendants of the Cabal, Freemasons, Illuminati. They don't want you to know about this. But there's mounds all over America, specifically in Ohio, Wisconsin, West Virginia are some of the biggest places, on through Pennsylvania, even New York in some places, the New York State. So here we got November 20th, 1883. And in this case, they unearthed a 7-foot skeleton in a 50-foot mound. And May 5th, 1885, as you see right here, a small mound. Oh, yeah, that was me working too fast. A small mound in Ohio with 4 huge skeletons, 7 to 8 feet tall, inside the mound, along with a whole bunch of cool things that it had included. So these giants, when they died, they'd bury themselves in these mounds, and we're now finding all these giant skeletons, and this is published in mainstream news. February 9th, 1890. Here again, this is in Pleasantville, New Jersey now. And what we see here is that they had a large mound with 8 bodies, 7 to 8 feet in height, and over 50 bodies in the mound altogether. You're probably starting to ask yourself, where the heck did all these skeletons go? Well, the Cabal created this thing called the Smithsonian Institution. And they say, oh, bring everything to the Smithsonian. We'll take care of it. It was the best false flag ever, because the Smithsonian got all of those things, and now it is illegal to own or to publicly display any giant skeletons because it's considered desecrating Native American ruins. So there's a law on the books that makes it illegal for you to ever have any of these on display. August 10th, 1891. The Wisconsin Mounds, Elaborate Systems of Defensive Works. August 10th, 1881. And they're talking here about the Fort Aztalan Pyramid Mounds in Wisconsin. There's 2 straight lines of mounds. Each straight line crosses over in an X pattern, and they go across 50 miles. So this suggests a great deal of intelligence behind the way they were being built. And it forms a great St. Andrew's Cross. Well, St. Andrew's Cross, for those of you who don't know, the official flag of Scotland, and it is based on St. Andrew, who was crucified and killed on the cross and apparently did ascend, hence he became a saint. And for those in the audience who happen to be into BDSM, you may already know that BDSM practitioners love to get a beating on a St. Andrew's cross. So when I started Googling this up, I found lots and lots of pictures like this, and this was probably about the cleanest one I can show you. And by the way, he is wearing, what is that, SpongeBob SquarePants underwear? No, it's Scooby-Doo underwear. And he says on the blog post that his buttocks were completely purple after this young lady had lots of fun doing what she was doing. So he probably didn't want to sit down for a while, but I guess that was his enjoyment, so go figure. Why does he put stuff like this in his talk? Well, I was going through and I saw it, so what the heck. October 3rd, 1892. Got to lighten it up a bit. A race of giants in Old Gaul from London Globe. Now this is actually Scotland. And what we see here is Scottish skeletons double the normal size of us in height. That means they're 12 feet tall in mounds found in Scotland. Then 1894, March 5th, we have giants found near Serpent Mound, Ohio. And the skeletons were over 6 feet in length, which doesn't sound that impressive to us now, but apparently some of them were a lot bigger than that. They were found with strange tools. Serpent Mound is probably the coolest looking remaining mound that these giants built while they had colonized America, and they apparently at one time, pre-Atlantean catastrophe, had a huge civilization in America. That's what a lot of this stuff is Atlantean ruins. Now this is a drawing of the original Serpent Mound, but an older drawing shows that both sides of the eye were there. That's very likely the left eye of the Illuminati that they were drawing. This is the same group of people with the same ancient religion. See that eye? That's the snake with the serpent's tail coming off of it. And this is what it looks like now. That mound is about 50, 60 feet tall. It's a huge thing. You can walk all the way around it. You see the roads for cars that have been built so you can drive around it and look at it. So a lot of work was put into this. And there's many, many of these mounds in Ohio, West Virginia, or where a lot of them are. It's all been covered up and suppressed. Towanda Daily Review, October 25th, 1897. And this one says that you have a very large thigh bone where the total skeleton would have to be over 7 feet tall in an Indian mound. December 20th, 1897 now. A Wisconsin mound again is opened with an over 9 foot tall gigantic skeleton. Now some people get pissed off and they say, David, why are you going through so many of these? Well, I like to give you the fact that there's a lot of data for the skeptics. That's why I'm going through it quickly here. The skull was half the size of half a bushel. A bushel is a really big barrel. So this thing was very large. Now we're getting towards the end of this now. September 7th, 1904. And this one was found, let's see, in New York, actually, down around New York City, in employ of the Harlem Railroad. Near Purdy's Station, there was an immense mound that they obviously got rid of to build New York City that had several skeletons of unusually giant size, 1904. So they wiped that out. May 4th, 1908. Giant skeletons found again. And this time, it's a cave in Mexico that had over 200 of these giant skeletons that were nearly 9 feet in height. And they say that this race antedated the Aztecs, because this was part of what was Atlantis before it was destroyed in the biblical flood that is reported in the book of Enoch that was the Atlantean cataclysm. The femur alone reached up to the thigh of the guy who was doing this, and the skull was 18 inches long from the front to the back. So this was a very large humanoid. Then we have Washington Times, California, July 13th, 1908. And this one is of near and dear importance to all of us as Los Angeles locals, because they dug it up right out here on the beach. You can literally frickin' walk to the beach from this hotel. Literally walk to the beach. And right over there, they dug up 14 skeletons that were over 9 feet tall each. So these people had lived right here, right where we are now. 3 perfect specimens were brought to a lab in Santa Monica to be exhibited and studied scientifically, and of course this has all been swept under the rug. And we find out that Catalina Island, which as you probably know is directly right over there. You just take a little ferry and it's right down by the marina. You can take a ferry over to Catalina Island. It's a nice little vacation island that we have right here people like to go to. Get a load of this. 3 to 6 times larger than people now. They had double rows of teeth, red hair, and skulls 3 to 6 times the size of normal humans. There's Catalina Island. I can see it from my house, actually. This is in the late 19th century. And it says that they had dwarf mammoth bones that were roasted in ancient fire pits, eaten by human-like creatures who were giants and had 2 sets of teeth. And this is an article that basically describes what I'm about to show you here, which is that in Catalina Island, this is staggering, they found 3,781 giant skeletons, and the whole thing was covered up. They took all of them away. They're all hidden away. And what I heard from my space program people is that the Illuminati, the Masons, at one point were destroying these giant skeletons left and right. They just take boats out into the ocean and dump the skeletons into the water. They didn't want anybody to find this. Now, however, they treat these as very valuable ancient relics, and you get in a lot of trouble if you destroy them. So they're still being found, and anytime I've heard from some of my insiders, anytime people start to find this, you're in big trouble now. You try to publish it, oh wow, we made an archaeological discovery. Look out. Because you're target number 1. They're not going to like this. This is not something that's going to happen. Skulls up to 6 times the size of normal humans. Almost 4,000 skeletons found on Catalina. You'll never look at it the same way. I never look at it the same way after that. Now we're up to May 4th, 1912, one of the last ones. Again, Wisconsin, near Lake Delavan. And this one actually got coverage in other things. 18 skeletons found in this mound, in this case. And the head slopes straight back directly over the eye sockets, just like the Egyptian pharaoh heads. And this brings us to our next big thing. 1913, and we start to see the first of only very few pictures that ever have survived. And there's one of the pictures. Notice the elongated skull there on the left. Almost 10 feet tall. And they were found in caves in this case with elongated skulls. Now we're up to July 14th, 1916. A mound that was found where in this case? Binghamton, New York. So this is upstate New York. 700 years ago is when it was found. And we have another one here from... this is the one that the article is talking about. It's actually in Pennsylvania. The article's from Binghamton. It was written in Binghamton. The actual mound was in Pennsylvania at Tioga Point. And they dug up 68 skeletons that were 7 feet or more in height. And it was believed to have been buried 700 years ago, around 1200 AD. Then we're getting right to the end. September 21st, 1916, they wrote up the same finding in the Wellsboro Gazette. Again, it's talking about Pennsylvania, the mound. And there's another one, which is in France, that apparently goes back 25,000 years. We don't know much more than that. I'd have to do more research, but it says skeletons of giant warriors. And they found the head, and they believe them to be 25,000 years old. Others were found in 1950 in Ireland by archaeologists, Superman-sized skeletons, as you can see right here. So this gets to the next big question, okay? Where are all the relics? We've got all these skeletons. Didn't anything survive? Aren't there any pictures? Isn't there anything cool we can look at? Yes, thank God. I've combed the internet clean and found everything I could possibly think of. And there's not very many, but there's some that are pretty darn cool that I found. So this is from the San Antonio Express, early 20th century. And this is the skulls, and you can see, look on the right there, that one on the right is a lot larger than the ones on the left. The other two are of normal size. So you notice large cheekbones, really large, bulky jaw. And this, as you can see, you have a normal skull on the right there in the middle. That's number 2. Number 1 is one of these giants. Really big jaw, much larger. And notice the shape of the skull. You got that elongated skull again, folks. Except now they're a lot taller because these are the earlier ones before they interbred and their height keeps dropping. Now we have skulls of the Incas, which, as I was showing you before, are what happens once the height starts to drop. We saw lots of cool examples of those. These are more of our own height. Another one that is a photograph that we found, this is one of the mounds before it was destroyed. They're starting to excavate the structure. A lot of these mounds do look like pyramids, but they're made out of dirt. Many of them have been destroyed, plowed over, or just ignored as mountains. There's still a lot of them in Ohio, and as I said, West Virginia, which hardly anybody lives in West Virginia. It's a lot of empty land. So in this mound, they apparently found a molar, a big tooth. And this is the guy pointing to what they apparently proved was a molar. Look at how large that thing is compared to one of our teeth. That's pretty wild. This was the grave site in the mound that they found. This is a drawing of it that had a giant skeleton inside that enclave. Now, in South Africa, Michael Tellinger has been always showing us this giant footprint that he found. This is probably one of those 36-foot tall, one of the oldest ones to come here, way, way back when they had first driven the moon into Earth's orbit and they started to settle on Earth. That's probably the types that we're talking about, or maybe even before they really settled. Then we have Cleveland National Forest. Somebody found a footprint there from a giant human, obviously a lot larger. And, of course, we have another footprint from Mount Blanco, Texas, with a nice picture of Coca-Cola, which, you know, if it was California, it would probably be green juice, but it's Texas. What do you expect? Very large footprint, which is totally to be expected. Now, we actually have some mummies that have been found. This one is Irish, 11 feet tall, that they put inside its own little sarcophagus. This apparently is a real image, and it's almost twice the height of us. Now, the Freemasons used to collect these and had galleries, and a couple of their pictures probably were originally held in private collections and then got leaked. So here's a Masonic photo that was probably never meant to be seen by people outside the Masons. And notice how tall that skeleton is compared to him. And there's the two pillars, the Masonic lore, Boaz and Joachim. And then notice also there's another extraterrestrial skeleton on the left there that's very short. So this probably was never supposed to see the light of day. And here's actually the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, visiting the giant skeleton. Again, probably never was supposed to see the light of day. This 9-foot mummy was found in 1895 in San Diego. And here was a newspaper illustration of it, of a guy posing next to it, about 9 feet tall. And there is an actual photo, a real photograph, of the mummy. You can see it had long hair, and these were believed to be an Indian tribe because they mixed in with the Native Americans. And apparently they stopped being cannibals in some cases so they could stay alive, because if they acted like cannibals, they were going to get killed off. They'd get scared into caves and killed and eaten. Or just killed. Probably not eaten. That's their job. That's what they were doing. Here's another example of a very large mummy, and the human probably only goes up to her waist. Oh no, she's not quite that tall. There she is in the sarcophagus there. So she's probably more of like a 7-footer, but this is one of the mummies, again, that we find. Now here's a guy, this is really interesting. This is another probably 8-foot mummy, something like that. She's about 2 feet taller than him with her head off to the side. Notice the skull. You see something odd about her head, folks? You see how wide that skull is? Does that look like one of our skulls? Heck no! That skull is really wide, and obviously it extends out into the back. So this is one of the best examples that we've got that survived, showing that gigantic skull. Now, this is a write-up from that same finding, and we don't have time to go through all this. This is another one that was found in Europe, and again, there's not very many of these, but here you have a series of razor clams that have been put over the eyes. Now, the razor clam usually grows to be about this big. Okay? So if you understand that and you look at this, those eye sockets are literally about 5 inches tall. So this is a very large head that the razor clams just happen to give us a size reference for. Here's another one that was found in Oregon. Again, you can see this is probably based on some of the signs and the things. It looks like it's about double the size of anybody else's skull. All of the museums that have had these on display, they've all been contacted, they've all been silenced, they've all been threatened. Unfortunately, there's no place you can go to see the real thing anymore. And then this one is really bizarre. This was a guy who actually went to Egypt, and a grave robber in 1998 found a mummy of a truly gigantic human with green skin and just hacked the finger off and actually allowed this guy to film it, and he wanted to come back and buy it, but he wasn't able to do so. And so what you're going to see here is how frickin' large this finger is, because there is an Egyptian pound. It's actually bigger than a $20 bill. It's taller. So the whole finger is literally like about this long. So those hands would be huge. This has got to be one of those original Osiris-type 36-footers like the original Sumerian Anunnaki that this grave robber happened to find. Unfortunately, we never heard from him again. So, surprise, surprise. So here's another shot of Osiris, those types. Notice how much taller he is than the woman that is standing behind him. Sitting down, he's already the same height that she is, so standing up, he'd probably be almost twice as tall. That's probably one of those types. So again, here's the size comparison chart of the different types that have been found on Earth, going from 6 feet all the way up to 36 feet in height. And this is a reconstruction, another one of very few that have survived, of one of the femur bones that was found in one of these giant digs. This guy was around 14 to 16 feet tall, so that's a very unusual one, bigger than usual. But that's the first shot I ever found years ago of this kind of phenomenon. And this is also apparently real from a Middle Eastern dig of some of their original battle axes that the giants used to hold and carry. And this, believe it or not, is actually a diagram where every single one of those purple push pins is a different documented site. This is done by researchers that have compiled all this together. Every one of those purple dots is where one of these giant skeleton sites were found. So they had extensively colonized the Americas at one point. So I hope you can see that what we're dealing with here is a very fascinating investigation that is far-reaching in scope, that has huge implications for what's going on in today's world. And all of the things that I'm telling you are part of this long-term battle for the future of the human civilization. What are we going to do on Earth? Where are we going? This geometric energy that we're made from has been around the whole time, and there's lots and lots of different people out there in the cosmos. We are made to ascend. The Illuminati cabal claims to be the descendants of these giants that were extraterrestrials, and I've now charted out the whole history that's never before been presented to the public. What you have just seen here is the very first time that anybody outside of a small circle of elite has ever gotten to hear and see the information that I have just presented to you. Yes, indeed.